Hi, I'm Kim and welcome to my channel. Now, there are going to be times where you need to know where the selvage is on your fabric. That's because you may need the straight of grain because you're dressmaking, or maybe you need to cut it selvage to selvage, perhaps when you're quilting and you're cutting your strips, and maybe you've got a scrap like this and you don't know which way is up. So let me switch camera and I will show you exactly, very easily, very simply, how to find that selvage. So let's just switch camera. Let's start with a quick anatomy lesson then. So don't worry if you weren't paying attention at school all those years ago. That doesn't matter. We're looking at the anatomy of fabric. So let me grab a piece of fabric first, because what we're trying to find is the selvage here. So the selvage, just in case you don't know, it's this bit on the edge here, and that's where they attach the yarn to the loom when they're weaving it. So these bits here, so this is either end. So this is one side, and then you've got the other side here. I don't know if you can see, but it's got little holes in it. Can you just sort of see there? It's got little holes in it where they're attaching it to the loom. And then on the other side, you generally have the make of the fabric, the manufacturer of the fabric, what it's made of. If you're very lucky, you'll get the name of the fabric, but you'll also find there's little holes in here as well. Can you see those? Just there. Okay, so those selvages are what we're looking for, but when we cut off, we can't find those. Why are they important? Because let's have a quick discussion about this anatomy. Just bear with me because this is important. And if you've been watching me, you'll know how bad I am at drawing, but even I think I can probably draw a rectangle. So we've got our fabric, we've got our selvages here, either ends. So that's where it's attached. And then you've got threads going that way, and you've got threads going that way. Okay, and if you want to write this down, these threads that go parallel to the selvage, let's turn this around so you can see. So this is the selvage, and these threads that go parallel are called your warp threads. And if you want an easy way of remembering that, I always think warp is parallel, which I have no idea how to spell, but parallel has got A's in it, and so has the warp, so that might help you. And then these threads here, these are the weft threads, and these go at right angles to, or perpendicular. I'm not sure I can spell that either, to be honest, but perpendicular, that's got an E in it, and the perpendicular's got an E in it, so that's another easy way to remember. Your diagonal lines here is where your bias is, and that's where you've got lots of stretch. Loads and loads and loads of stretch. So we'll see this in a minute. Now your warp threads here don't stretch. They just stay very parallel to your selvage and they don't stretch at all. Whereas your weft thread have a slight little stretch to them, a little bit. All right, with me so far? So let me show you on the fabric. So here's the one I was just showing you. It's not ironed. I just grabbed it off my cutting table. So we've got the selvage down at the bottom here. And do you remember I said we've got our selvage, so that's that bit here. We've got our warp threads and they run parallel. And if you look at your fabric closely, you'll see that you can see all the little grain lines in there. But if you get a piece of your fabric and you pull it parallel to your selvage, you'll find that there is no stretch in there, there's no give, there's no nothing. And I know this is a quilting channel, but let's just say you're making a pencil skirt. I'm not, I'm long gone wearing pencil skirts, but if you want to wear a pencil skirt, you don't really want to cut it on that parallel warp thread there because you won't be able to sit down in it. Just my opinion. I like a bit of stretch in my clothes. So that's the parallel, that's the warp that has no stretch at all. Whereas if we pull along the weft threads, so if you remember, the weft threads are the ones that run at right angles or perpendicular to the selvage. So there's our selvage, these are our weft threads. So let's just pull that And can you see we've got a little bit of a stretch in there now? All right, so now we know that. We know this is our warp because it's got 0 stretch. Try it on a bit of fabric you've got that you can see the selvages. And then on the weft thread, give that a little tug and you've got a bit of a stretch there. But just be careful because when you're on the bias, so your bias is your 45-degree diagonal, it can be in either direction, your 45-degree diagonal. If I pull it across the 45 degrees, so my fingers and thumbs are just off the camera there, if I pull that, can you see there's loads and loads of stretch on there? So if you're making a nice swishy skirt or you want a dress that's kind of just skims you, but you can still sit down in it, you're going to be cutting on the bias. That's also useful to know in the world of quilting because when we're cutting any triangle shapes, we're going to be cutting across that bias. So that immediately tells us that this is going to be very stretchy. So we have to be very careful because when we're stitching it or we're matching it up, matching our seams up, this is going to potentially cause us an issue if we start pulling it out of shape. So you just need to be aware of that we don't want to pull that too much, but it can work in your favour if you need to manipulate that a little bit and get it to work for you. So if you feel that that's got loads and loads of stretch, your weft has a little bit of stretch, can you see the difference? And then your warp has no stretch at all. So let me get rid of that and get another piece of fabric here that you'll see no selvages on here at all. So where are my warp and weft lines? Where are my selvages going to be? I don't know. In fact, I really don't know on this piece of fabric. So I'm going to test it by giving it a little tug. So if I can see the cross grain lines in here. You can see those. If you look closely enough at your fabric, you can see where the warp and the weft threads are. You just don't know which is which. So I'm going to get each side and I'm going to give it a little tug. Has that got any stretch? Don't think so. If I turn it round here, let's give this a stretch and see. Straight away we've got a stretch. So this one has to be our weft thread. This one has no stretch in it. All you can see on camera is it just moving in the light, but there's no stretch, there's no give, whereas this one definitely has the give. So therefore, if that is my weft and I know that that is at right angles to my selvages, then I know immediately my selvages are going to be here. And that is my very easy way of finding it. But it doesn't just work with rectangular pieces. So let's just say you've got a bit of a scrappy piece around. And here's one I prepared earlier. So this is a scrappy piece. I have no idea which way is up on this one at all. There's nothing to guide me. Yes, I can sort of see the grain lines, but this is a really dark fabric. But again, I can do the stretch test. But I've got no straight line cutting here to help me. So I could pull and find myself immediately on the bias. So you want to kind of work around your odd shapes. So if I pull here, I've got a little bit of a stretch, haven't I? Let me pull at right angles to that and see what happens. No, just zero stretch on that bit. So that's going to be my warp thread. And if I pull the diagonal, see there is my bias. And I know that because there's no stretch there at all, just zero stretch. If I go at the kind of cross to that, the right angles, if I give that, we've got a bit of a stretch, so that has to be my weft. And if I go at 45 degrees to both of those, I've got a nice big stretch, so that's my bias. So if you've got the scraps and you need to start cutting them up, you need to know where your grain lines are so that you can cut straight. You don't want to be cutting this inadvertently on the bias, particularly if you want straight pieces and you want squares and rectangles for your patchwork. That's just not really going to work. There's going to be stretch in them and that's going to cause you all levels of annoyances. So this one, we know immediately that there is our, is that our weft? Let's find it again. There's our weft. Can you see there's a little bit of stretch? Oh, is there? Is that a stretch? You see, it's easy to lose, isn't it? Okay. Okay, so there's our weft. This is live on camera. So we found there's our warp. There's no stretch there. That's just the fabric moving. We've got our weft. We've got our bias. Now we know where it all is. And that is exactly how to find your selvage on any piece of fabric that you happen to come across. And that means you can cut it straight. And in the next video, if you watch out, you will see how to cut it straight even if you've got wobbly corners. So I hope that helps, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.